God. Proverbs chapter 1. In verse 28, it says, Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. For they hated knowledge, and did not choose the fear of the Lord. I love that verse 29, because they hated knowledge. And you stop and you consider and you look back to the time that you have understood the fear of the Lord. It's been because you had knowledge. You saw things. You saw the reality of this life. And that's true. I don't care who you are. The only way that you really understand the fear of the Lord is because there came a knowledge to you. You were smarter. That's what it is. Then I walked away and I became dumber. Is that right English? No English, guys? Dumberer? Is that better? Dumberer? Okay. I became dumber. I became a fool because I walked away from the knowledge of God. From the knowledge of that fear. Now, we're human. I don't think this is news to God. I think God knows this about us. I think God knows this about me. And so, He gave lots of verses to remind us, to put us in mind, to recall, to remember, a memorial. All these verses may be coming through your brain about where the Lord says remember. You know, call to remembrance. Anybody know what the Lord's Supper is about? A remembrance of what Jesus has done. Fellowship is a remembering. A communion is a closeness. And that accentuated in the Lord's Supper. Psalms 89. Because the Lord wants this. The Lord desires this. The Lord wants all of us to have the fear of the Lord. In fact, He finds it pleases Him a lot. Psalms 89 and verse 7 says, God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the saints, and to be had in reverence of all them that are about Him. Amen. He is to be feared in the assembly of the saints. Now, when we look at this fear and we stop and we consider this fear, sometimes we think that it's a bad thing. We think that we shouldn't be fearing the Lord. That we shouldn't be, like in our society, we shouldn't fear anything. Isn't that declared? Isn't that preached? Isn't that promoted? Don't fear anything. You shouldn't fear this and you shouldn't fear that. Right? Stand against the power. All you kids out there. No. Don't fear these things. Fear is understanding what's there. Fear is understanding who God is. We're going to skip to a different verse. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 10. We understand who God is and what He is capable of. Matthew chapter 10. We're going to start in verse 24. It says, The disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple that he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called, or if they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? So pause right there. And let's consider that for a minute. You know, everybody in here, or at least at some point, at least you have gone the direction or openly stated that you want to follow the Lord. Even if you're lost, right? You're here and you've at least said, I want to follow God. Right? Now, whatever it is, you got to work it out, I don't know, figure it out, right? Whatever it is. But those of you who have been saved, we're going to take a look at Ecclesiastes chapter 8, a couple other things. We're going to see that the Lord, if you want to be a servant of the Lord, you will be mocked. you will be made fun of. Now, not a superficial. If you out here and you go out here and you try to be a religious person in a superficial kind of manner, you're not going to be mocked because that's what the world does. But if you actually implement the standard of God, the truth of God, and you actually serve the Lord, and you actually put Him first, and you actually fear the Lord, like He says, you will be looked down on. Just like He says there, they called Jesus Beelzebub. They called Him a devil. You stand for righteousness, you will be called a devil. You stand for what is right. Talked about fornication. You stand up against fornication in this society, you're going to be looked at like a pariah. You're going to be, whatever. You're nothing. Right? But what does He continue to say there? It says, fear them not, therefore. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. What I tell you in darkness, that speak ye in light. And what ye hear in the ear, that preach ye upon the housetops. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear Him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. That's the God that we are dealing with. Amen. And here's the reality of the world that we live in. Is if you know the Lord, you want to know when you're going to know the Lord? You're going to know Him between you and Him alone. It is going to be a very personal experience. Even if you're sitting here listening to a preaching. A preacher, a good preacher, hopefully, gets himself out of the way and you can hear the words of the Lord. That's the hope of any preacher bringing a message. So, if you really are going to know the Lord, if it's going to testify to you, it is going to be between you and God alone. Now, that is true and universal for everybody that knows the Lord. Now, what does that mean? What does that translate to? Which means you're going to have to stand for the Lord and for His principles because you alone see it to be important. And you will feel like you're standing all by yourself. You'll feel that way. Even though you're not. But you will feel that way because it is to you and to you alone. Salvation is to you and you alone. Amen. Serving the Lord is for you and you alone. And your relationship is between you and the Lord, is between you and God alone. And it is either developed or neglected by you yourself. Amen. And then as you stand, as you declare, as you step up, as you hear these things, does the Lord tell you? What you hear in darkness, speak in the light. In other words, what you hear the Lord tell you, declare those things to be so. Declare them as reality. Declare these things as truth, because they are truth. Fear the Lord. Declare the fear of the Lord. You ought to fear the Lord. Amen. Individuals you talk to, when you talk to them, yeah, I fear the Lord. Because the Lord is powerful and can destroy both body and soul in hell. And if that's your reality, that's the difference. Choose the fear of the Lord. Choose that reality. I don't know if you know this. You can choose your own reality. You can make the world whatever you want it to be. I'm blown away, and I don't know why this comes to my mind, but I'm blown away. Some people, they live in depression. Right? And you can be standing right next to those individuals, and I sympathize. I feel bad, right? But an individual who is in true depression, they cannot see themselves out of depression. That's what real depression. I'm not talking about sadness. I'm talking about depression. And those individuals, because everybody gets sad, I'm talking about an individual that is depressed. They can't see themselves out of it. Why? Whatever reason, their reality is depression. And that's the reality that they are in. You can choose the reality that you in. You can choose the reality of this world. You can. You can turn on the TV, you can go hang out. Well, limited nowadays, but you can go do what you want, right? You can make this world whatever you want. Free, white, and 21. Right? White, that's an old days, old time. Throwback, okay? But you're free. You can do what you want. You can do anything you want. And that is the reality that many people live. But it neglects, it stops, it denies the fear of the Lord. It denies the reality that God is real. And He has power. And He has strength. And go over to Ecclesiastes chapter 8. You know, there are some things that I guess when I look at these things, it dawns on me, or it shows, at least to me, that God is real. And I don't doubt that God is real, but there's a lot of things that a lot of people do, and even inside Baptist churches, even inside New Testament churches, people like to say, God's not real. Okay? It's a thing that people like to say, and even if they say out loud God's real, there's a lot of people that, is God real? Is it really there? Is He real? You know, because honestly, how many of you have actually seen God? What? Nobody wants to raise their hand? Me neither. Anybody actually hear the voice of God? Me neither. Anybody here seen a miracle? Maybe that'd be good evidence. No. Right? What evidence do you have that God is real? There's no physical evidence. That's just reality. There's none. Well, the world, everything around us, right? The truth, you know. But when I see these things, and we'll refer a couple of other ones, but verse 11. It says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. So let's talk about the realities of what people see and the realities of what people do. The reality is true right there. If an individual decides to do something evil, decides to do some sin, the judgment is not passed speedily. So in our minds, well, I sinned, I have sinned, but the Lord, He didn't bring down the building on top of me. We're all standing still, and the roof's still attached. So, I don't know, is God real? Because he didn't drop a tower on me. It's not executed speedily. So we have this idea in our brain very often that even though I am not listening to the Lord, I haven't obeyed the Lord. I heard these preachers all my life. I grew up in church. I listened. And all the time they're telling me about the chastisement of God. They're telling me about the destruction of the Lord that He can bring. But I have been doing what I have been wanting to do for years and years, and nothing has ever happened. Okay, turn over to Hebrews chapter 10. You know, that's a valid thought. It's not a right thought, but it's a valid thought. It's a thought that people have. It's a I don't know, something that people like to lie to themselves about. Because the reality is there that judgment comes. And judgment, if you really look at it, comes faster than you realize. The easy one to look at is fellowship. Anybody here been in fellowship with the Lord before? I hope everybody can say yes. What happens the moment you sin? You lose the fellowship of the Lord. That's a reality. but you don't see it because you're in the sin. That's pretty foolish, isn't it? Hebrews chapter 10, and I was reading this the other day, and it is so telling. You want proof that God is real? Here it is. It says in verse 16, "This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my law in their hearts, and in their minds will I write them. Their sins and iniquities will I remember no more." We read that verse 16, and I just told you right there that that's the proof that God exists. Everybody here is looking at that and they're going, how is that the proof that God exists? Here it is. I don't care who you are in this world. I don't care what happens in this society. I don't care what country you came from. I don't care where it existed. You know murder is murder and it is wrong. How? You know that lying is a sin. How? You know that there are laws of God that when you break, you are guilty before God. And it's not because I'm some persuasive guy and convincing you of all of the evils that are going to take place. That's not why it's there. It's there because of this covenant declared in His Word. That He will put His law in your heart. That you will know that what is right and what is wrong. Now, I know there are people in this world that you can sear that conscience. You can lie to yourself so much that you can just ignore that conscience. Right? Ones come to mind, serial killers, whatever it is. You can sear that. But it is a truth in every living human being that you know what sin is. That's what it says over there in Romans, the first chapter. You want evidence, you want proof that God is real? Right there. Because you listen in the schools now today, schools do not teach according to the Bible. Schools do not tell you fornication is wrong. In fact, they kind of promote it. Not outright, but boy, they certainly try to make everything available to anybody who wants it to say, you know, you go ahead and what's right for you is right for you and you just do what you want. And everybody knows that it's wrong. Oh, you sear that conscience. And sometimes it happens quick. But you know it's wrong. And you know it's wrong not because mom and dad, but you know it's wrong because this word right here declares it. Because God is real. And He is 100% truthful. Amen. And that alone ought to make you stop and recognize the power of God. Amen. Because that means every person in this world has the same set of rules from God. Amen. And He delivers it to every person in this world. That's pretty powerful. That's pretty strong. And that's the God that we are dealing with. Turn over to Hebrews chapter 11. Probably should just reference over there in Revelations what we looked at Brother Valera's lesson this morning. When we understand and trying to remember, trying to call to remembrance the fear of the Lord. Because we have to stop and we need to fear the Lord. And fear of the Lord is not terror of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is understanding who He is and His power. And respect and reverence and humility at the understanding of my reality. But we're going to read these and we see that God through the ages has proven His power. In verse 32, it says, "And what shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, and of Barak, and of Samson, and of Joseph, of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, and turned to flight the armies of the aliens. And on we keep reading. But we see and we read about the power that God has. And the power that God has, and all the stories in the Bible of the individuals who were delivered. We just read it. David and Goliath, right? David, a small boy, a young man, stood up there against a guy that was 9 foot 9 inches tall. That's a big guy. 9 foot 9 inches. What's these? Are these 12 foot? I don't know. Huge man. A guy a lot bigger than me. Almost twice my size. I'm only 5'10". Huge guy. And here's David, a young man, takes him out. Kills him. Daniel in the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego standing before Nebuchadnezzar, saying, we're not going to bow to you. Thrown into this fire, a fire so hot that killed the people that threw them in, but these guys walked around, hands in their pockets, sure, hey, we're good. Walked out. Well, the power of God, that's the power of God. The power of God is such that there is nothing in this world, if the Lord so choose, that will kill you. He is the giver and taker of life. You realize every apostle that died, it's because God killed him. Not because of the individuals in the world. Daniel didn't die from the lions because God said he's not going to die from the lions. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't die from the fire because God said they're not going to die from the fire. Amen. So they didn't. That's the power that we're dealing with. And you and I, we don't live in those ages of miracles, but I'm going to tell you, maybe you've been in an accident. I always think about the one my brother did. He was driving down the freeway in a tow in a trailer that he should not have been towing with a Suburban that was not qualified to tow that trailer. Everything crashes around him. He looked, says, okay, we're hitting. I'm getting in an accident. Next thing you know, swerved around, missed everything. Oh, that's a miracle. No, it's not. That's the power of God. Some of you have your own testimonies of the very same thing. And hey, maybe you didn't come out unscathed, but maybe God let you live. But maybe it's a remembrance of the power of God, what He can do. A reminder of what God can do. Because God is all-powerful. And we say that so often we lose the significance. But the all-power of God, none can stand against it. None can defy it. None can declare and say, who are you, God? No one here can question God. Or you can ask the questions, but you have no authority. And your questions, how many of them you get answered? Well, if you get the Bible and you study, you'll see them. But God doesn't come down and say, oh, sorry. Okay. Let me tell you why. He doesn't do that. Because there is no one over God. He answers to no one. This is the God that we are dealing with. Matthew chapter 24. Fear the Lord. Choose the fear of the Lord. I don't know any other way to say it other than just keep repeating it over and over. Just make it, keep saying, and hopefully it will stick. Right? Throw spaghetti against the wall, the noodles, and maybe they'll stick. Fear the Lord. I need to remember to fear the Lord. Right. I need to take some time and remember the power of God. Who He is, what He can do. Humble myself before Him. There's an amazing thing that happens when you do that. Amen. When you fear the Lord, truly fear the Lord, you will find you fear nothing else. you will fear. There is nothing else in this world to be afraid of. I'd rather choose that one fear of the Lord, because He can deliver everything that goes on. You know what? One of the few things, I don't care if I die. Lord's given me that. Probably a lot of this room is the same thing. I don't care if I die walking out the door. If a meteorite were to fall out of the sky and I fell, I am not afraid of that. I have no fear of death. I'm not just saying that. I have no fear of death. You want to know why I have no fear of death? Because Jesus conquered that fear. Jesus removed that fear because He saved my soul. And He promised, you will live forever. And I don't just hear it in words on a page, but it is true all the way through my being that God has delivered me from my sin. He'll do the same thing for you. What do we do with it? Matthew chapter 24, verse 42. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. And these verses are very prevalent for me in these last months because the Lord is coming soon. And we all have the ability, and every one of us at times are able to put that on a shelf and ignore it. Wonder how the people through the tribulation are able to see all the stuff they go through and still reject the Lord? It's called compartmentalizing. Putting things on the shelf. And we're good at it. To ignore, to place, oh yeah, this is real, it's going to happen, but I'm going to do my thing anyways. Let's not live that way. Verse 43. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Who then is that faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? That is you and me. We have been given a gift in these last days to see the signs of His second coming. I have no idea when Jesus is coming back, but it's soon. The signs are all there. Everything is pointing to the coming of Jesus Christ. Amen. You see the stage in the world set. You see all of the ability of the mark of the beast to be able to be taken place. And maybe it's nothing like my mind says. Maybe it's a crayon drawing of him in this head. I have no idea what it is. But what I think is it's probably going to be some kind of a chip. 20, 30 years ago, that would not have been thought of. I remember anybody watch that End Days movies, End Time movies? You used to think it was a barcode. Well, now, we look back and go, it's not really a barcode. It's not going to be a barcode. Maybe it's a chip. I don't know. Maybe 10 years from now, there'll be something, I have no idea. But the reality is, it is coming soon. Amen. Every stage on the chessboard is placed right where it needs to be. Amen. Everything is right here in front of you. We see pestilence in diverse places. Earthquakes in diverse places. I don't know if you guys pay attention to the news, but there was an earthquake, was it 2 weeks ago over in Idaho? Is that what it was? Nevada. Earthquakes all over the place. I don't know if you notice right now they're having a huge problem with locusts over in Africa, I believe. A bad pestilence. You kids probably didn't know all that stuff, did you? It's going on. There is pestilence all over the place. You hear of starvation. That's the new fear from all this COVID-19 stuff, is the starvation that will most likely take place. You see people petrified over viruses that you can't control anyways. You can't fix it. And they are afraid to death. And it has petrified the world. And so it's everywhere. The Lord is coming very soon. I have no idea when. Nobody knows when. Anybody tells you they know when, they're a fool. But the signs are here. The Lord tells us we can see the signs. So what does that mean for you and me? That means for you and me, you better buck up right now. You better get ready right now. You better learn the fear of the Lord right now. We have an opportunity right now to have an option to be in His bride. Oh, well, that's it. This is real. What's it going to take? It's going to take you actually paying attention. You know, when you enter into the Lord's house, you ought to prepare yourself before entering into the Lord's house. Take a look at the tabernacle. They washed themselves. They did a sacrifice, then they washed themselves, I should say. Ready to enter into the Lord's house. Very precious to me now, not having it. But an assembly of a New Testament church is an amazing thing. And we take it for granted. I know I did. And if the Lord tarries His coming, I probably will again, knowing my human self. So stop. Before you walk through the doors, put your mind on the Lord. Wake up in the morning. Stick a verse in your brain. Let it roll around in your brain all day. Repent on a regular basis. Usually multiple times a day, I find I have to do. Fear the Lord. Reverence the Lord. You know what fear and reverence of the Lord is? It's simply an understanding of the reality and the truth that is. You realize that 1,000 years from now, 100,000 years from now, everybody that is alive will know the fear of the Lord. Amen. There will be no doubt. Right now, we have the ability to doubt it. But there will be no doubt. All those in hell, they will fear the Lord. They will see the fear of the Lord right there. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. You want to know the fear of the Lord? And look at these verses. These are the verses that come to mind. Verse 7 says, "And you who were troubled, rest with us." You put the Lord first. You pay attention to the Lord. It's a difficult path. It's a difficult path because you're always going to be fighting against yourself. Because your flesh is always going to want sin. So you're going to be struggling with your own self. What you want to do and what you should do. What the Lord wants you to do and what the flesh wants you to do. You're going to be troubled. You who are troubled, rest with us. When the Lord Jesus shall be revealed from heaven with His mighty angels, in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God, and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, who shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of His power. Amen. One of the amazing things that I look at, when I pay attention to that, a lot of people look at that flaming fire, and that's a real thing. I don't want to take away from the flaming fire. But you're going to be destroyed from the presence of the Lord. I don't know about you. I know what it's like to be in fellowship with the Lord, and I know what it's like to be out of fellowship with the Lord. And it's hard being out of the fellowship of the Lord. You want to know what the destruction from the presence of the Lord is? You look at Jesus Christ. God Himself Jesus Christ on the cross took every pain that man could throw at him, the whips, the beatings, the thrashings, all the things more marred than any other man on the face of the earth. Hold on, I know the attention is difficult. Pay attention a little longer. Jesus Christ endured the physical lashings, the worst thing that man could ever give. Amen. He never cried out once. But what made Jesus cry out? 3 hours away from God the Father. 3 hours away from God the Father. And Jesus cries out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? 3 hours? You think you can live an eternity without him? It's amazing, the arrogance of man.
Amen.
Oh yeah, I can handle it. I'm a big tough man. I'm 45. I can handle it. I've got everything that this world can dish out of me. I can take it. Yeah. And God cried out after 3 hours without the presence of his Father. And here was Jesus who had life in himself. Go figure that. There's no one that can stand and endure the destruction that God has in store for those that do not know him.
Amen.
But want to turn away from him. It is not a good day. As we stand and our song leader and the piano player come, Revelations chapter 20. Whether you like it or not, you will fear the Lord. You can choose to fear the Lord here on this earth. You can choose to fear. And that's the amazing blessing of Jesus Christ, of God himself, is that he will never force you to do anything. You can choose not to fear the Lord. And you can choose to fear the Lord. He's never forced anyone to be saved. We see that in the tribulation. Look at all the horrible things that go on. The terrible things of the tribulation. And those individuals that are lost, God still doesn't force them. But there's one reality that everybody will face. They will fear the Lord one day. You will fear the Lord one day. I hope you choose the fear of the Lord now. Revelations chapter 20 and verse 11. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God. That's Jesus Christ. And the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. Verse 15, and whosoever was not found written in the book was cast into the lake of fire. That day, every man will fear the Lord. Amen. Guaranteed. Philippians said, every man will bow. And if you're here today, the Lord is not done with you. You have an opportunity. You have the ability right now to choose to fear the Lord. It's not hard. He doesn't make it impossible. He actually makes it very easy. In fact, so easy that we complicate it. That we just simply need to surrender to the Lord. What verse shall we sing? Number 99.
Way
voice our prayer as we join those in the altar.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this day, and I just thank you, Lord, for this message that we've heard. And I ask you, Lord, to please just help us all to just continue to ponder it and think about it and apply it to our lives, Lord, and that, Lord, we will just truly understand and have the fear of you that we should, and that we will be willing to tell others about you and share your word with them, and that we will be able to see lost souls saved and come to you, and be able to escape what's to come after the rapture during the tribulation period. And Lord, I just ask you to please just help us all to just take it seriously and be more mindful and knowing, Lord, that your return is getting closer each day. And Lord, I just ask you to be with all of my family and loved ones, Lord, that are lost and that are not right with you, Lord, that they will just have their eyes and hearts open to the reality, Lord, and that they will turn to you and just help me, Lord, to be the witness that I should be. And I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for your time and your attention. Any word or announcement, prayer request at this time? None? You guys are a quiet church at times? At times. Other times, pretty cruel and harsh. For the title, would you dismiss us in a word of prayer?
Heavenly Father, thank you again, Lord, for bringing us here today, for that message of God. Bless the day, nothing is administrated. Use each of us, Lord, as you have us to be the witnesses for you that we should be. Lord, if there's one who is lost today, that the lesson, the messages, Lord, that the message that each one would convict, Lord, that we would understand that you put a burden on us, Lord, to draw closer to you, to be saved,